Before we start, please support the channel, hit like, and subscribe. The sun was pouring through the kitchen windows, painting everything in a golden light, but the warmth in the room evaporated the moment Samantha walked in. She was smiling, too easily, too brightly, like someone returning from a picnic, not from whatever lie she'd just lived through. In her hands, she held a bouquet of red and white roses, cradled like they were something sacred. "They're beautiful, aren't they?" she said, placing them in the sink like it was any normal Thursday morning. "A friend gave them to me." I didn't say a word at first, just stood there near the counter, unmoving. My fingers wrapped tight around my coffee mug, knuckles pale. She knew I had brought her roses yesterday, cream-colored ones, her favorite, and those were still untouched in the living room, wilting in silence. I finally spoke, voice low, steady. "You have friends now that give you roses?" She didn't miss a beat. "It's not like that. He's just thoughtful." "He?" My voice clipped sharper than I meant. "Since when do thoughtful men hand you roses and you just take them?" Her expression twitched, just for a second, but she covered it quickly. "Why are you always reading into everything, Jake? It's just flowers." "I gave you flowers yesterday, Sam," I said, stepping forward. "And you didn't even bother to trim the stems." She crossed her arms, leaning against the fridge like this conversation bored her. "Maybe because you're suffocating me." "Ever think of that? Suffocating?" I said, letting out a quiet laugh. "You walk in with roses from another man, and I'm the problem?" "Oh, don't turn this into another scene," she snapped, her voice rising. "God, you're always so suspicious. Maybe if you weren't so controlling." That's when I cut her off. Calmly, without flinching, I reached over, grabbed the bouquet, walked to the trash can, and dropped it in. The roses landed with a soft thump against yesterday's coffee grounds and eggshells. Samantha stared at the trash, mouth open, eyes wide. "Are you insane?" I met her gaze dead on. "No, I'm awake." For a second, the room froze. Even the clock seemed to stop ticking. "You can't control who gives me flowers," she hissed. "But you can decide whether you accept them," I replied. "You made your choice." We stood there like boxers in a ring, neither willing to back down. The golden morning light felt like a spotlight now, exposing everything. The cracks in our smiles, the lies stitched into her sentences, the ache in my chest I hadn't wanted to name. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Instead, she grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and stormed out toward the hallway, muttering something under her breath. I just stood there, hands flat on the countertop, watching her go. My heart was pounding, but not with rage, with clarity. Samantha thought I'd crumble. She expected begging, shouting, desperation. But I wasn't going to play the part she wrote for me. I glanced down at the wilted bouquet in the trash, shook my head, and walked back toward the table where my laptop and notebook waited. Work was calling. Deadlines didn't care about heartbreak. "My name's Jake. I'm a contractor, custom homes mostly, around Boise and the Valley. I build things that last. Foundations that don't crack under pressure." It's ironic, I guess, because somewhere along the way, I forgot to check the blueprints of my own home. But here's the thing, I see clearly now. And this was just the first crack in the wall. 3 days passed. We barely spoke. The air between us had thinned into something brittle. We moved like strangers in our own house, passing each other in the hallway, brushing elbows in silence at the sink, speaking only when silence was too awkward to hold. She didn't mention the flowers in the trash. I didn't ask about the man who gave them. But every moment since that morning had started to stretch, longer, colder, quieter. Then came Friday. The sky had turned that early winter blue, clear but sharp, the kind that cuts deep by dinner time. I'd already eaten a reheated bowl of chili and finished cleaning the dishes by the time the garage door still hadn't opened. It was nearly 7. Samantha usually pulled in before 6:30. Her office was downtown, 12 minutes from here. She'd text if she was running late. But tonight, nothing. Until the door finally creaked open at 7:14. Her heels tapped across the entryway tile before I saw her step into the kitchen, shrugging off her coat with a breathless little laugh, like she'd just come from something delightful. I glanced up from the chair, saying nothing. She didn't notice my stare at first, not until she walked a little closer, tossing her scarf on the counter. That's when it hit me. Cologne. Not hers. Something heavy, woodsy, and distinctly male. The kind that lingers on skin and fabric if you've been sitting next to it long enough. She caught the look in my eyes, and for a half second, her expression hesitated. But she played it off fast, stepping over to the fridge. Ugh, today was a mess. Travis from accounting got a flat tire, and I stayed back to help wrap up the monthlies. She grabbed a can of sparkling water, cracked it open, sipped, all while avoiding eye contact. I didn't blink. You smell different. She stiffened, then smiled, a small, forced thing. Oh, that's probably Jack's cologne. He gave me a ride. Travis's flat was right next to the parking garage, so Jack offered. We ended up walking an extra block since there was construction near the exit. Jack. I'd never heard his name before. Not once in the 10 years I'd heard her complain about coworkers, deadlines, printers, or broken coffee machines. Jack. I repeated slowly, voice neutral. Yeah, Jack. She laughed lightly, brushing her hair behind her ear like that would settle things. He's harmless. Very married. I watched her as she sipped again, eyes too bright, smile too wide, hands too fidgety. How long you been walking blocks with Jack? I asked, standing now, stepping around the counter until we were face to face. Her eyes flicked up, defensive. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I'm not accusing you, I said. I'm asking you, very clearly, who you're choosing to walk with. The smile faltered. Just a flicker. Jake, she started, but I cut her off. I'm not playing games anymore. This isn't about flowers or rides or mystery cologne. It's about the path you're on. You want to flirt your way into someone else's front seat, fine. Just don't leave the door halfway open here. Samantha scoffed, shaking her head. You're being dramatic. It's a ride, for God's sake. I gave you a ride once too, I said quietly. 10 years later, we're married. Just think about that. She didn't reply, didn't deny it. She turned away and took her water to the sink, pretending to be annoyed, but I saw the way her fingers trembled as she set the can down. And as she walked out of the kitchen, her voice trailing behind her, there was no more laughter. Just one word, muttered under her breath. Whatever. I stood there in the kitchen, arms folded, hearing the faint clack of her heels on the stairs above. Whatever, huh? Not denial. Not apology. Not even a lie worth believing. Just dismissal. And with that, the wall between us grew a little thicker. Samantha's birthday landed on a Saturday that year. The kind of day where the air feels oddly still, too calm, like something's waiting just out of frame. She'd spent the whole week acting normal. Maybe a little too normal. More makeup than usual. More giggles on her phone, which she claimed was from old high school friends, messaging birthday wishes. By the afternoon, the house was clean and humming. Music playing low. Scented candles lit. Chips poured into bowls like confetti. Our small living room in Boise was packed wall to wall with familiar faces. Her cousins, some of her coworkers, neighbors who showed up for free wine and half-hearted small talk. And Samantha? She was glowing. Wearing this pale blue sweater dress that hugged a little tighter than her usual style. She floated from guest to guest like a politician working a room, laughing, touching arms, tossing back stories that made people laugh too easily. I kept my spot near the back window, sipping a soda, watching, not her, the driveway. There's a certain instinct you develop when something's wrong in your home. You start noticing details that shouldn't matter, like the sound of unfamiliar tires crunching gravel. That's what I heard at exactly 5:42 p.m. A black car, sleek, polished, too clean for this neighborhood, pulled slowly into the curb just outside our fence. Driver didn't get out right away, just sat there, engine idling, eyes scanning the front porch. I stepped away from the punch table and moved toward the door. It opened behind me, and Samantha appeared with a slice of cake in her hand. Jake? She asked lightly, following my gaze. What's up? The black car door opened, and there he was. Tall, impeccably dressed, hair gelled just enough. The kind of man who wears sunglasses on a cloudy day like he's hiding from paparazzi that aren't coming. He had a gift bag in one hand. Small, expensive looking. The kind of thing you give when you want to impress, not when you care. Samantha's smile faltered. Then she masked it with a quick sip of her wine. I stepped outside, met him halfway down the driveway. He slowed when he saw me, hesitated, then tried to play it cool. Hey, this Samantha's place? His voice was smooth, too smooth. I didn't answer right away, just stared at the bag in his hand. He tried again. I'm a friend, just dropping off a little something for her birthday. I looked him up and down. A friend. He laughed, too quickly. Yeah, from the gym. Just wanted to. Don't. I said, my tone quiet but firm. You're not coming in. He blinked, caught off guard. Sorry? I stepped forward, close enough to catch the scent of his expensive cologne. The same one that had clung to Samantha 3 nights ago. I don't care what she told you, I said. You've got 30 seconds to walk away with whatever self-respect you still have. Or I'll walk that bag inside myself and ask her if she wants to explain it in front of everyone. His eyes darted toward the porch, then back to me. I didn't know, he started. I don't care, I said again. Leave. Now. He stared at me for a long second, like he was deciding whether to argue. Then he turned, climbed back into his car, and reversed out of the driveway without another word. I stood there, watching the car disappear down the block. When I turned back toward the porch, Samantha was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, pretending to sip wine like she hadn't seen a thing. But her eyes were fixed on mine. And for the first time, she looked scared. Not guilty. Not defensive. Just exposed. The music was still playing, but I couldn't hear it. Not really. The moment I stepped back inside, everything sounded muffled. Like I was underwater. Or like my mind had turned the volume down on the world so I could focus on just one thing, her. Samantha. She was back to pretending. Her wine glass, perfectly perched, smile glued back on like fresh paint over cracked walls. She laughed at something her cousin said, brushed a curl behind her ear, and glanced at me only once, as if trying to read how much I'd seen. I didn't give her anything. Not until 10 minutes later, when she walked toward the kitchen with a half-empty tray of mini quiches. I followed her in. The second the swinging door clicked shut behind me, I leaned against it, arms crossed, blocking her way out. She froze mid-step, tray still in her hand. Need something? She asked, tone light but brittle around the edges. Yeah, I said. The truth. She didn't blink, just lowered the tray onto the counter and turned toward the sink, like rinsing her hands could erase the last 5 minutes. Jake, why was he here? I asked, calm as stone. Your friend. Her hands stilled under the water. He just wanted to drop off a gift. That's all. Funny, I said, stepping closer. Because just a friend usually doesn't linger outside a married woman's house like he's debating whether to risk his life stepping in. She turned off the faucet, slowly dried her hands on a dish towel, still facing the sink. You're overreacting. Then look me in the eye, I said. She didn't. Samantha. Silence. Who is he? Finally, she turned. Her face was set. Not apologetic. Not even defensive. Just tired. His name is Noah, she said. He's a friend from the gym. We've talked. Had coffee. That's it. Talk. I repeated, walking closer. Coffee. You're inviting men like that into our driveway for casual drop-offs now? I didn't invite him, she snapped. He just showed up. I didn't know he was coming. Right? I said, staring at her hard. Just like you didn't know his cologne would cling to your sweater last week. She folded her arms, jaw tightening. You're twisting everything. I'm seeing everything, I corrected. I asked you to choose who you're walking with. And instead, you tried to dance your way down the middle. I haven't done anything, she said, voice cracking just slightly. I haven't crossed a line. I stepped back, let the silence stretch. Then I nodded once. Slowly. Then you won't mind if I tell everyone out there that a man just showed up with earrings in a velvet box and asked for you by name. Her face went pale. He didn't. I didn't let her finish. I told him to leave, I said, turning toward the door. I spared you. For now. And with that, I walked out. Left her standing in the kitchen with her party dress, her perfect lies, and the tray of forgotten appetizers. I didn't go far. Just out to the truck. Sat behind the wheel in silence. My hands on the steering wheel. Tight. Still. While inside, the music played on like nothing had changed. But I knew better. Everything had. I hadn't moved. Not for 10 minutes. Maybe more. The cab of the truck was quiet except for the low hum of distant music leaking from the house. Some upbeat pop song clashing hard against the storm building in my chest. My fists were still resting on the wheel, tight and quiet, my knuckles pale from the pressure. Then, click. Passenger door. I didn't look. I already knew who it was. Only one person would slip into that seat like it was familiar. Only one person would close the door gently, like she was entering a confession booth. Hey, Jake, Megan said softly. Samantha's little sister. Always too sharp for her own good. The kind of woman who watched everything from the edges of a room and never asked questions she didn't already know the answers to. I glanced at her. She had her legs crossed, boots dusted with snow, arms folded tight, like she was keeping something dangerous just under the surface. "Want me to leave?" she asked. I shrugged. "Depends on what you came out here for." She smirked. Honesty. That word hit harder than I wanted it to. I leaned back in my seat. "Go on then." Megan looked at me for a long second before speaking, like she was measuring whether I was ready to hear it. Then she said it. "Your wife is lying to you." The words hung in the air like smoke. Sharp. Slow. I didn't react right away. Just exhaled quietly. "She said Noah's just a friend." I said. "They had coffee. That's all." Megan rolled her eyes. "Please. That man has been following her around for months." She's not subtle. The way she leans in when she talks to him at the gym, it's practically a movie scene. I turned toward her. "You've seen them?" She nodded. "Every week." Samantha thinks I'm too self-absorbed to notice anything. But I'm not blind, Jake. I saw the earrings in that bag. You don't give someone jewelry like that unless something's happening. She says nothing crossed the line. I muttered, bitter at how tired that phrase was becoming. "She crossed it the second she started hiding things from you," Megan said, voice quieter now. "And I think she wants to get caught. She just doesn't want to admit it." I looked at her, really looked. "What do you want from me, Megan?" Her lips curled into the faintest smirk. But it wasn't cruel, it was determined. "To help," she said simply. "To teach her a lesson." I narrowed my eyes. "And what would that look like?" Megan leaned back, the leather seat groaning under her. "Come with me right now," she said, casual like she was offering to pick up fast food. I stared at her, searching for a trace of sarcasm. But she wasn't joking. "Megan, she won't stop until someone stops her," she cut in. "And if that someone is her little sister? Even better." I shook my head slowly. "Why would you do that to her?" A beat passed. Then Megan looked out the windshield, voice dropping low. "Because she doesn't deserve someone who still waits for her in the truck." Her words landed like a cold splash of truth. She turned to me, eyes serious now. "You can sit here all night and let her keep walking that line. Or you can come inside and make sure she falls off it." I didn't move, didn't speak, but something shifted in the air between us. Megan reached for the door handle. "I'll be waiting by the porch," she said. "Don't take too long." And with that, she stepped out, back toward the house, leaving the door open for me to follow. I didn't rush, but I didn't hesitate either. By the time I stepped back out of the truck and made my way toward the porch, Megan was already standing near the door, one hand on her hip, the other resting on the frame like she owned the place. Her head tilted slightly as I approached, her expression unreadable, eyes sharp with intent. "You ready?" she asked. "No," I muttered, pushing the door open. "But let's do it anyway." We stepped inside together. The moment the door shut behind us, everything slowed. Conversations dipped. A few heads turned. At first, it was just the usual glance people give when someone walks into a room. But then they saw Megan's hand slip into mine. And then they really started watching. She leaned in close, her voice barely a whisper. "Trust me." Before I could ask what she meant, before I could say anything at all, she turned, cupped my face with both hands, and kissed me. Right there, right in front of everyone. A deep, deliberate kiss, slow enough to be noticed, soft enough to be haunting, and loud enough to shatter the silence that followed. The room gasped. Not figuratively. Literally. I could feel every set of eyes locking onto us. The heat of judgment, the confusion, the instant awkwardness. Someone dropped a plastic cup. A muffled laugh died in someone else's throat. I pulled back first, stunned. "Megan," I started. But she wasn't looking at me. She was looking past me. I followed her gaze. "Samantha." She stood frozen across the room, wine glass tilted in midair like she'd forgotten it was in her hand. Her lips parted, her eyes wide, disbelief painting every inch of her face. The glass slipped, shattered on the hardwood in a mess of red and shards. The silence turned stiffer. Then Megan stepped forward, cool, calm, like she'd rehearsed this moment in her head 1,000 times. "I think," she said, her voice slicing through the room like a wire. "Someone should ask Samantha about her lover." No one breathed. Samantha's mouth moved, but no words came out. Her hands hovered uselessly in the air, unsure of whether to clean the glass, defend herself, or run. All around us, the guests shifted. Whispers broke out. Nervous laughter. Some of them started grabbing their coats. Others just stared, hoping this was some twisted party game with a punchline coming soon. It wasn't. Samantha finally found her voice. Megan, what the hell are you doing? But it was too late. The show was already over. Megan turned on her heel and walked toward the hallway without another word. I stood there, still near the door, letting the weight of everything settle. Samantha's eyes locked on mine across the room, wide and wet with shock. Jake, she whispered, her voice barely carrying. Please, I didn't move. Didn't speak. She took a step forward, unsure. Her mouth opened again, but someone at the back of the room cleared their throat, loud and intentional. The spell was broken. People began to shuffle out. Coats thrown on quickly. Awkward nods. One of her co-workers mumbled something about having an early morning. Another didn't say anything at all. Within minutes, the laughter was gone. The music was still playing, but now it sounded ridiculous. Hollow. And there she stood, Samantha, surrounded by broken glass, unfinished cake, and the ghost of a party that had collapsed in on itself. I didn't look back as I stepped outside. Didn't need to. The silence following me said enough. The morning after was almost surreal. Sunlight poured in through the kitchen windows like nothing had happened, as if broken glass and whispered accusations hadn't shattered the night just hours before. But the only thing broken now was the silence I'd hoped would linger. Because when I walked in, she was at the stove, flipping pancakes, wearing her soft, faded robe, and humming something tuneless under her breath like this was just any other Sunday morning in our house. A mixing bowl sat in the sink. The air smelled like vanilla and burnt syrup. She even set the table, forks, plates, 2 mugs. I stood in the doorway, watching her move like a woman untouched by guilt. She finally noticed me. Oh, you're up, she said with a bright, too easy smile. I figured you might want something warm after, the long night. I didn't answer. She slid a pancake onto a plate and pushed it toward me, trying to seem casual. I went a little overboard, she laughed too loud. Made like 10 of these. I always cook when I'm nervous. You know that. My eyes didn't leave her face. Nervous. She froze for half a breath, then quickly smiled again. I mean, everything got kind of out of hand last night. Megan can be dramatic. I pulled out a chair, but didn't sit. Just stood there with my hands on the back of it. She kissed me in front of everyone. I said slowly. Samantha's eyes darted to mine, and I saw something flicker. Not pain. Not anger. Calculating. She stepped toward the sink, rinsing a pan that didn't need rinsing. She's always had a flair for attention. That kiss. She scoffed. A cheap stunt. You didn't look like you thought it was a stunt. She turned, towel in hand. What's that supposed to mean? I studied her. You looked scared. She let out a dry laugh. Because it was humiliating, Jake. In front of my friends, my coworkers? It was your idea to stand by her like that? It wasn't planned, I said. But I didn't stop her either. She stared at me, the towel twisting between her fingers. So what? You're with her now? No, I said plainly. I'm with myself now. For the first time in a long time. The silence landed sharp between us. She blinked, mouth twitching, like she didn't know what part of that to respond to. Then she tried again, voice softer. Look, Megan's obviously jealous. She's always been that way with me. She probably made the whole lover thing up just to humiliate me. I raised an eyebrow. So Noah's imaginary now? Her expression didn't falter fast enough. That half-second of stillness, that single blink of panic, told me everything I needed to know. I let the silence grow. She stepped forward, reaching for my arm. Jake, I didn't cross a line. Okay, maybe I've been distant, maybe I flirted a little, but nothing serious happened. You know me. You know I'd never actually. I saw the way you looked at him. Her voice caught. I saw it, Sam. That look of yours, you used to give that to me. She swallowed hard, hand slowly lowering back to her side. I made pancakes, she said again, as if repeating it could undo the truth. And for a moment, I almost pitied her. She was clinging to the ritual, the motions, the morning, the smell of comfort food, as if they could wash away everything that had been exposed the night before. But there's no recipe for trust once it's burned. I pushed the plate aside gently. I'm not hungry. She followed me with her eyes as I grabbed my jacket from the chair. Where are you going? I didn't look at her when I said it. Somewhere honest. And then I left her there, standing in the kitchen in her robe, surrounded by pancakes no one would eat. The house looked still from the outside. Too still. I pulled into the driveway just after dusk. The sky above Boise had turned that grayish purple you only see for 10 minutes before full dark, and everything felt cold, muted. like the kind of silence that isn't just quiet, it's personal. I hadn't planned on coming back so soon. After I left that morning, I'd driven without any real destination, just letting the wheels carry me past empty parking lots, gas stations, old strip malls. I didn't want to think, but my thoughts chased me anyway. Samantha hadn't called. Not once. Maybe she figured I'd cool off and come home to the smell of pancakes and another fake smile. But when I pulled up to the side of the house, I misjudged the angle slightly. Distracted, tired, probably still chewing on the bitterness from this morning. My tire bumped the side of the garbage bin. It wobbled once, then tipped over completely. I sighed, killed the engine, and stepped out to fix it. Plastic bags spilled across the gravel. Fast food wrappers, used napkins, a torn paper towel roll. Just the usual clutter of a week spent pretending life is normal. But then something caught my eye. A box. Flattened. No label showing at first. I crouched to pick it up, and when I turned it over, the air left my lungs. It was an empty box of pregnancy tests. Not one. Not two. A multi-pack. Used. Discarded in a rush, no doubt. Buried under layers of trash like it could stay hidden forever. But fate has a way of putting things exactly where they need to be seen. I stared at it, unmoving. My first thought wasn't anger. It was math. We hadn't been intimate in over a month. Maybe longer. My stomach twisted. The cologne. The late nights. The earrings. The nervous laughter. And now this. The weight of everything settled right in my chest, pressing hard. I stood up slowly, still holding the box in one hand, and looked at the warm glow leaking from the living room window. She was inside, probably waiting to try again. To lie better this time. I didn't walk in fast. I didn't slam the door. I opened it quietly, stepped into the living room, and sat down on the edge of the couch like a man waiting for a meeting he already knew the outcome of. I placed the box on the coffee table, plain as day, and then I waited. For her. For the moment. For the truth to walk through the door on trembling legs. The front door creaked open like it didn't want to interrupt the silence I'd built in the living room. Samantha's footsteps were light, too light. Like she knew I was home. Like she knew something had shifted. She stepped into the room, purse in one hand, her coat still hanging off one shoulder. Her eyes landed on me first. Then, slowly, they dropped to the box on the coffee table. The box. The empty pregnancy test package, slightly bent at the corners, resting in plain sight like a detonator no one wanted to touch. Her whole body tensed. She didn't say anything for a moment. Just blinked. Twice. Then, with a forced exhale, she straightened up and dropped her purse by the stairs like she hadn't just walked into the middle of a minefield. "You're back," she said softly. "I am," I replied, voice calm. Too calm. She walked toward the kitchen, but slowed near the couch. Her eyes hadn't left the box. "That's," she began, voice fragile. "Used," I said. "Found it by the trash. After I knocked the bin over. Lucky accident." She stood frozen, halfway between the living room and her escape route. "Jake," she said, tone shifting into something more rehearsed, more careful. "I can explain." "I doubt that," I said, leaning back, arms crossed. There was no anger in my voice, and that terrified her more than yelling ever could. She stepped forward slowly, hands open. "Look, yes, I took a test. I was late, and I panicked, okay? I didn't want to tell you unless I was sure. We haven't been together in 6 weeks," I said. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I let the silence hold. Then, I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "I've seen the messages." Her eyes snapped to mine. "What? What messages?" I didn't move. "Megan showed me everything. Screenshots. Full threads. You and Noah." She swallowed hard. "Jake, those were just words. Just texting. It wasn't anything real." "Funny," I said, because the tone of the messages said otherwise. "You sounded invested." "That's not fair," she said, shaking her head. "You don't know the context. I know what he calls you." I interrupted. "I know the nicknames. I know when you started. I know what nights you told me you were staying late for a meeting. And I know what you told him afterward." Samantha's face crumbled. Her legs gave out first. She sank into the armchair across from me, suddenly looking small, like the walls had shrunk around her. Tears welled, but I didn't flinch. She reached forward, voice cracking. "Jake, please, it didn't mean anything. I was lonely. I was confused. But I didn't sleep with him." I stared at her. Then slowly, deliberately, I pointed at the box again. You sure? Silence. Her throat tightened. I don't know, she whispered. And that was it. That was all I needed to hear. I stood, walked to the closet, and pulled out the small gray suitcase I'd packed last week. The one I never unpacked. I carried it to the door and opened it. Not to leave, but to place something inside. A set of folded papers. Neatly printed. Signed. Ready. I'll be presenting everything in court, I said. The screenshots. The timeline. The emotional betrayal. The pregnancy test. She looked up at me, panic spreading fast now. Jake, wait, please don't do this. We can fix this. We can talk about everything. I still love you. I'm not interested in love that lies this easily. She stood abruptly, voice rising. You're not being fair. You never asked how I was feeling. You were always just here, present but cold. I made one mistake. Stop, I said sharply, but my voice never rose. She froze. You didn't make one mistake, I continued. You made hundreds. Every lie, every message, every ride with him, every time you walked past me knowing what you were hiding. She opened her mouth, but I stepped toward the door and opened it instead. Cold night air rushed in. Samantha's tears were streaming now. I lifted her suitcase from the hallway closet, already packed, set it gently on the porch. She stood behind me, breath shallow, trembling. I don't want to go, she whispered. I didn't want any of this either, I said. But you chose it. And with that, I stepped aside. She didn't move at first. But then, slowly, she reached for the handle. And the door closed behind her with a final, hollow click. It was just after 8. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm. Still, but not peaceful. Just emptied out. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee that had gone lukewarm, watching the morning light spill across the floor. Then came the banging. Sharp. Panicked. Followed by her voice. Jake. Jake, please open the door. I didn't move. Didn't even blink. More pounding. Fists against the wood. And then her voice again, hoarse and cracking. I know I messed up, okay? I know I lied. But it didn't mean anything. It didn't go all the way, Jake. You have to believe me. I stood slowly. Walked to the front hallway. More knocks. More desperation. I was scared. I was lonely. But I never stopped loving you. Not for a second. I opened the door. Not all the way. Just enough to see her face. Tear-streaked, hair wild, wearing the same coat from last night like she hadn't slept at all. She gasped when she saw me. Oh, thank God, she whispered. You're here. I was always here, I said. She stepped forward, but I didn't let her inside. Jake, please. You're angry. You're hurt. I get it. But this isn't who we are. We've been through too much to let it in like this. I said nothing. You don't throw away years together for one mistake, she continued, voice trembling. People forgive. If love remains, anything can be forgiven. I leaned on the doorframe, staring at her. Then I shook my head once. Then go forgive yourself. Her breath caught, like I'd hit her with a word instead of a fist. She blinked, swaying slightly on her feet. Jake, but I didn't speak again. Didn't plead. Didn't explain. I just closed the door. Quietly. Deliberately. And on the other side, I heard her sob break loose, raw and helpless. But I didn't open it again. Not this time. Not anymore. The house was still again. Only now, it finally felt honest. It had been 3 weeks since the door closed behind her. The house had settled. Not just in the literal sense, though the quiet had become something I didn't dread anymore, but in my chest, too. Like everything inside me had finally stopped rattling. I met Megan on a Thursday. Small cafe downtown. Nothing fancy. 2 chairs on the sidewalk. The hiss of the espresso machine inside. A string of tiny lights overhead, even though it was still daylight. She was already there when I arrived, stirring something iced in a tall glass and watching the traffic like it was a game. When she saw me, she gave that same sly grin she always wore, half amusement, half challenge. You survived, she said. I pulled out the chair across from her. Barely. She sipped her drink. You look lighter. Divorce will do that. She raised a brow. Still going through with it? I nodded. Papers are in. She hasn't contested anything. I think deep down, she knows it's over. Megan leaned back in her chair, her eyes flicking over me like she was measuring something. I meant what I said, you know. That night. Yeah, I said. You did what needed to be done. She smiled wider. That kiss really sold it, huh? I chuckled, the first real laugh in a while. Maybe ease up on the dramatic kisses next time. No promises, she said, lifting her glass. We sat in silence for a moment, just watching the world pass by. Cars. People. Life moving on like it always does. Then I glanced at her and said, "Thanks, Megan, for not looking away, for telling me what I didn't want to admit." She shrugged. "You always deserve better." I just gave the truth a little nudge. I sipped my coffee, watching steam curl in the air. It didn't feel like a victory, just clarity. And sometimes, that's more valuable than revenge. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying her weight, or her lies, or the ache of pretending everything was fine. For the first time in years, I felt peace. That was the end of my story. Megan stepped in when no one else would, kissed me in front of a room full of people, and forced the truth into the open. Some say that was crossing a line. Others say it saved me. So tell me, did she do the right thing? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to like and subscribe.